And again, I'd like to welcome you. The idea of building a resilient community here in Port Alberni is of prime importance to many of us. There's been a great deal of thought going into it from a number of quarters, a lot of activists discussing, and really when the rubber hits the road, the true sustainability is, at least in large part, consists of people doing business locally, buying locally, producing locally, and generating but ideas within the community. And some people have already started doing that. And they're going to kick things off. Thank you.
All right, thanks everyone for coming out. My name is Patrick, and I'm here with my friend Curtis here, and we're part of BC Hydro's Community Outreach Program. So as you all know, we're here to talk a bit about sustainability and in specifics, businesses and sustainability. So BC Hydro offers a number of programs to help households, individuals, and businesses to become more energy efficient and take that first step towards becoming a sustainable business. We're going to talk. Can you hear me better now? Yeah? All right. So I'm going to talk a bit about some behavioral things as well as some of our programs to offer incentives for upgrading to energy efficient technology. First thing is really there's two basic ways that you can become more energy efficient. One is to make behavioral changes. The other is to make technology changes. So the first thing I'm going to talk about is the behavioral changes. And so many of these are low cost or no cost things, and they're fairly simple things like shutting off a monitor, turning out the lights, and they seem like fairly common sense. But once you get into the workplace and you have 9 or 10 people there, it kind of accountability gets lost, and people don't really work towards this main goal. So BC Hydro has a number of tools and tips on our website, and you can go to bchydro.com/work smart, as you can see up there. And there's a lot of really great things you can do to help get the entire company on board for working towards these behaviors. I have a little story about BC Ferries, and they were trying to implement an energy conservation program, and they were having a hard time getting their employees to shut off monitors. They had about 40 or 50% of employees were shutting their monitors off at the end of the day. So what they did is they just took a little Hershey Kiss and put it on everyone's desk who shut off their monitor with a little note saying thank you. And within 3 weeks, they had over 90% of people shutting their monitors off. So there's some pretty easy things you can do, and as long as you get a little creative with it, people are going to, be willing to make these changes. So the second part of this is the technology changes. So this is upgrading to more energy efficient products. So how many people here have heard of BC Hydro's product incentive program? Well, that's good, quite a few of you. And how many people have actually participated in it? And that's great. So basically, the product incentive program is BC Hydro offers rebates on replacing old inefficient technologies with newer, more efficient ones. And this is going to benefit you in several ways. As you can see up here, it's going to reduce your operating costs as well as maintenance costs, because a lot of these products not only use less energy, but they have a longer lifespan. The next is they're going to improve your work environment. We've had several companies who've come to us after they've had new lighting installed, saying how just being able to work in a better lit environment has improved the overall atmosphere. It's going to be a step towards being more sustainable. And lastly, we're offering rebates, so there's a financial incentive towards it as well. So the program is fairly simple. To be eligible for it, all you need to do is have a BC Hydro business account. This also includes Stratas. And you need to have a minimum of $50 in rebates. So you just have to, you can replace 3 LED light bulbs, and that's over your $50. So sorry, I should explain the program a bit better. So this is basically replacing things like incandescent light bulbs, inefficient fridges for restaurants and things like that, HVAC systems, and a lot of different lighting. And if you replace certain technologies with newer, more efficient ones, then we will send you a rebate. So for example, a screw-in LED light, you can get a $35 rebate if you're replacing a 60-watt incandescent bulb with that. And currently, those LEDs cost about $30 on market. So you're getting basically a free replacement. So it's a pretty good deal. And lastly, it has to be the products, that BC Hydro has identified. So we have an e-catalog online that outlines the products that have met our criteria. And there's also a list of available technologies. And I'll show you the website at the end here. And it has to be installed by a certified energy installer. So basically, it's 4 easy steps to do it. The first is to go through your business and look at basically the products that will meet the criteria, and then you go and you purchase them, apply for the rebate within 120 days, and then we'll send you your check. To find out a bit more about this, you just go to bchydro.com/incentives, and there's the e-catalog, which has all the qualifying products there, as well as a list of the technologies that you're able to replace. And there's also a phone number to reach a PowerSmart business expert who will be able to walk you through every step of the way. Curtis and I will be staying after the event. If you have any questions about the program or any of our other programs, we'd be happy to answer them. Yeah, that's it. Thank you.
Our next speaker will be Cindy Stern from the Tishat First Nation.
So I'm the CEO for the Tishat First Nation, and I thank Dan for inviting us to be able to share with you some of the things that we're doing. We're a community that's moving forward. First Nations communities are some of the fastest growing communities in Canada these days. And a lot of over the last 10, 15 years or so, there's been a lot of changes that's happened in the courts and that's changed the way government deals with First Nations. That's starting to change the way businesses deal with First Nations, which is starting to be able to change First Nations and how they relate to their communities and the things that they're doing. And we enjoy a great relationship with the city. We have a protocol agreement with the city that we are very appreciative of, and a good relationship with the regional district. We work closely with North Island College. We work closely with the school district. Lots of really good relationships here. And Tishat see themselves as an integral part of the Alberni Valley, an integral part of the Port Alberni community. And as they say all the time, they're not going anywhere. They've been here forever, and they will always be here. Okay, so tapping the bar didn't work. Oh, there we go. So those of you who, of course, are from Port Alberni must have seen our administration building. And just in this light, it doesn't show up that great. But our administration building that sits over top of the Somas River is the focal point of the community. It's actually, I think, made a real change in how Tishat is perceived and how Tishat members perceive themselves within the community. It's been really important in the last few years in our development. And there's a picture on the right, in the lower right there, of the council that kind of made that happen. And this is today's council. The Tishat have 4-year terms. Oh, that's falling lower and lower. Okay. Oh, perfect. Led by Chief Les Sam, the council is made up of Mike Watts and Luke George. Some of you know these people: Dennis Bill, Boyd Gallick, Willard Gallick, Richard Sam Sr., Irma Robinson, and Lisa Fred. And I name all of them because the rest of the stuff I'm going to talk to you about what we're doing, couldn't be possible without these people. It's a 9-member council. That's a lot of people on a council. I've worked in government for many years with lots of committees and boards, and I can tell you I've never worked with one that is as effective and efficient as this group. They have a single focus. They move forward. There's no dissent. They're all there to do one main thing, and that's to improve the quality of life for the members. We have a number of businesses that we already have and that we are growing, and new ones we're hoping to create. So most of you, I'm sure, have been to the Shop Market or have at least driven past it. If you only drive past it, please stop, go in, get gas, buy stuff. The Shop Market's been there since 1979. It's on the reserve. When you pass the market and the Bank of Montreal, which we own that building, and lease it to the Bank of Montreal, once you pass that, you've gone off the reserve. The old Sprout Elementary School is just past it. We actually bought that property and are working on plans to develop it. But that's where the reserve ends. The market has been very successful, and we are in the process right now of making plans for an expansion. You might have noticed there's a new partner there as far as gas provider that just changed this year, and that's we feel that's a really healthy relationship that's going to be positive and profit-making for us, and we're continuing to look at growing that business. We actually have an economic development meeting. That's the theme for our community meeting tomorrow, and we'll be talking with the community about some of those plans and some of the other things I'm going to talk to you about tonight. We have Sachat's been involved in the forestry industry for at least 15 years now, probably a little bit more. That's how I got involved with them. In my previous life, I worked for Ministry of Forests, and when I left government and started consulting, Sachat approached me right away and said, would you come and help us build our forestry program? And somehow I went from that to being their CEO, but and I really love that. But our forestry business is growing, and if some of you may have read in the paper, we've just concluded a very long negotiation with government. And Les likes to point out that when Sachat started that negotiation, I was actually the negotiator for government. So it's funny how things turn. But we've finally reached a conclusion, and that will help us further grow our forest interests. But more importantly, what we have achieved is acquiring area-based long-term licenses. So if you're from Port Alberni, you know the drill. It's like a tree farm license. It's a different form of license, but it's the same concept. Long-term area-based means you manage the land base. This is what Sachat has been striving for years and years, so that they can actually have influence. And you're going to see a different style of management. You're going to see integrated resource management out there. They are part of the community just like you are, and they're going to manage that as their backyard, because that's what it is. It's part of their traditional territory, and they're business minded. It's going to be operated as a business, but it's going to take a different approach than industrial model. We have fisheries is another key area of our business, and again, you know, I'm sure this isn't new to you. You've all seen over the years, and some of you may be buyers of some of our members' fish on the side of the road. For years and years, that's been something that's been sort of a how do you describe that commercial industry? It was something DFO would turn away from as long as it was done on the reserve. It was sort of legal and not legal, oddly. But in this last year, we were able to negotiate commercial licenses, and with DFO for sockeye, for the first time, we've had commercial arrangement with for Chinook for a few years, and that was done largely through Sachat developing an agreement and a cooperative approach with the sport fishermen and with the commercial fishermen, and together they sorted out how we're going to deal with the allocation. DFO is resisted, but is sort of having to move along for various reasons. So we have in the top right, you can see it, that's our community fishery. There's always been a community fishery up at the dam. We do it a couple of times a week, and that's where fish are communally gathered for and distributed to elders, to disabled, and then if there's a fish remaining, to members. And we do it right there on the beach. People take their fish home and put it in their freezer, smoke it, whatever they do with it. The commercial fishery is different. We have what Sasha calls a mosquito fleet, which is basically the members who do fish commercially have their own boats, and it's small scale, little. They have their own nets, and it's largely they fish for themselves, but they're really fishing for their families and their extended families, not just their immediate families. And there are many people who do this on the community that this is their major source of income for the year. It's also their major source of food for the year. And so, it's really a maximizing the use of the resource. And Sasha's very, very proud that they have their own fisheries management that they establish at the beginning of the season. They hear what DFO says, and they pay heed to the numbers that they get in the returns. And then they say, here's what we're going to do. And when the fish return was very, very low a couple of years ago, it was Sasha who said, before anybody else said it, we're going to shut it down. We're not fishing. They told their members, we're not fishing. They didn't like it. There were some members who really didn't like that news. But we had elders tell them why and explain that we want fish for our children, so we have to stop. We have to respect that we need to give the fish time to recover. And we had really good compliance with that. Today now, we've had the last couple of years good returns. Now we're looking at being able to develop a commercial fishery, and we're looking at how we can take that and create product that we can brand and sell and ship away, sell locally, so that we're not just catching fish and giving it away to the lowest price to the closest buyer. We want to keep those benefits local. And one thing about First Nations doing that is most of the community keeps their money here in Alberni. They don't, I'm not saying they never leave and they don't spend any money in Nanaimo or whatever, but for the most part, the majority of their money is spent here and supports this community. And they're very proud of that. We're looking at developing a greenhouse operation. We're just in the business planning stage, and in fact, I was in Montreal last week for one day to visit a greenhouse operation similar to, based on what we're hoping to be able to replicate. But we're looking at being able to grow lettuce for the commercial market, to be able to grow lettuce on Vancouver Island, to be able to sell to retailers on Vancouver Island. Our lettuce comes from California. That's just not right. So we're hoping we can change that. We're working on developing a hydro project. Again, this is in feasibility stages right now, and we'll be giving update to the community tomorrow night about that. A lot of First Nations see these hydro projects, run-of-the-river micro hydro projects, as very good opportunities for generating revenue that we can use to support services to our community. They don't really create jobs. The greenhouse, that's going to create a lot of jobs. It's going to create a lot of jobs for Sasha members, but also for other people, because we won't likely fill them all. We're talking about probably as many as 40 full-time, all year-round jobs. A run-of-the-river operation will maybe employ 1 or 2 people, but it will create a consistent revenue stream that's very secure, as long as you can actually develop the project and get the agreement with BC Hydro. Thanks, guys. You give a good word for us, right? We're looking into opportunities for Aboriginal cultural tourism, and it's surprising in Port Alberni how little of that there is. And then as I work on it, I realize it's not easy. You don't just go, poof, here's a tourism opportunity. But we're looking at some things, and they're quite different from what you might think. And I'm not in any position right now to really share details with you, and it's not something that's going to happen tomorrow. But it's worth telling you that we are very seriously looking at how we can move into that sector and provide something that will help attract tourists to Alberni and the area. And how do we do this? We've got really two objectives with our economic development. It's generate employment opportunity and create revenue that goes back to the band to support services for the community. That's what it's about. And so for creating employment, we need to prepare our members to be able to be job ready. And we also want to prepare our members just to be employable and to be able to be out and supporting their families and having all those things that as people you gain when you're supporting yourself and you're not dependent on anybody else. That sense of self-worth and the importance that creates generationally as you pass that on to the children. So we created 2 years ago, we created a program called SEEDS, and what we took is our social assistance program, which is like UI, and we turned it 180 degrees and we called it Social Education and Employment Development Services. And if you were coming in for social assistance, you would go through automatically a series of assessments. You would go through, I wouldn't say we don't put them through, you are offered workshops that you participate in, and we help develop a plan. And for some people it's just, what do their assessment might say, we need to help support this person just to get them to the point where they have the basic needs a person needs to be able to think about education and employment. You have to have food, security, safety. We deal with that if we need to. Other people, we've had a really successful partnership with the school district. We now have over 30 people in the last 2 years who've got their high school diploma going through this program. And it's done right on the reserve. We have a building that houses our centers for doing this. And we have employment. And for those of you who are in the business area, our employment coordinator is Sandra Rose. She's been out and about the town quite a bit in the last month. We can provide incentive support to employers to employ our people. We do job placement, and we provide training. So we're working to help develop skills and get people employed and off of dependency on social services so they can stand on their own 2 feet. And that's an important link to our economic development. So Sachot looks forward, is really intent on looking forward. They're not interested in living in the past. And when they look forward, they're not just looking at 5 years, 10 years. And when we go out, and a lot of times I go to meetings, I'm used to, in my culture, we talk 5 years, 10 years. If we go crazy, we talk 20 years. First Nations think in generations. I was at a meeting the other day and somebody said, we have to think 7 generations ahead. And I went, oh my God. But I mean, that's where they come from. And when you think about it, because they know that this is where they will always be, there isn't that question. For some of us, I was raised, I don't say this very often in BC, but I was raised in Toronto. And yeah, I know. And I've moved a lot in my lifetime, but that's not the story for most First Nations people. They like to stay where their home, historic, cultural homeland is. Their traditional territory is here, Alberni Valley, and that's not going to change. And they, as I said, they are a part of the community, and they want to be seen that way, and they want to be a productive part of this community. And they want to be seen that way. They really want to, they've worked really hard in the last few years to raise their profile, but also to contribute in a positive way. Because they know historically how some people perceived First Nations people, Indians. And there's still some of that out there, but they know that they have to demonstrate and show that that is not the way it is today. As I said, the benefits that they generate for themselves will also benefit this community. So I think if you have an opportunity to come and visit us, that beautiful building, it's amazing to me how often people say, oh yes, but I've never come in. It's wide open. We welcome people all the time. We're happy to show people around. We're very proud of it. And so you're welcome to come and see it. And while you're doing that, think about Sechot as an opportunity and not as a threat, because that's what they are.
Thank you very much. The next speaker on my list is Tom Wegar. Oh, there he is.
I knew I'd come after Cindy and have to. Thank you. Well, good evening, everyone. My name is Tom Wegar. I'm the Regional Director for North Island College here in town. My presentation won't be quite as long or as extensive as Cindy's was, partly because as a college we're not doing a great deal of green technologies currently, although we are exploring a number of options, and I want to talk a little bit about that. But part of the reason we're not doing a great deal is because, you know, we're really not as large as the BCITs or the SAITs in Calgary in terms of their ability to do green technologies. I mean, they tend to be innovators and very much at the forefront of training and research around green energies, green technologies. But we are exploring a few things, and one of the areas that currently is sort of front and center for us in terms of doing some exploration is in the trades. Our Dean of Trades is currently looking at, currently hiring a consultant to have a review for us around green technologies in two areas. One of them is sort of the green energies, the solar panels, wind turbine, perhaps tidal energy, that sort of thing. And another area is in the greening of building technologies. So whether it's in our electrical program or whether it's in our carpentry program, you know, teaching students in a variety of ways about the green technologies that have been in use or are emerging. And in fact, one of our instructors, Guy Langlois, is here, and Guy has a background in green technologies from Vancouver Island University that at some point very quickly hopefully we'll be relying on. So we are exploring this topic very, very quickly and hoping to move in that area in a broader way. We also have recently put a proposal forward in partnership with EcoTrust Canada, 5 First Nations on the West Coast, and 2 other post-secondary institutions, VIU and the Nicola Valley Institute of Technology, for a fairly innovative program on the West Coast. Unfortunately, it hasn't received a positive response at this point from the federal government, who we've applied to. But we're still pushing it and we're still hoping to get a response. And it's essentially a program that really focuses on local control of local resources, and particularly around building. We're calling it a Standing Trees to Standing Timber program, which is really geared around the whole realm of harvesting, milling timber, and ultimately building it into a viable construction, whether it's a local house or a commercial building sort of thing. We have a culinary arts program in town. I think some of you are familiar with it. We currently offer it and have for many years in the old ADSS cafeteria, the current ADSS cafeteria. We do it as an evening program after the high school is finished their day. Of course, that facility will no longer be available to us after this year because of the closure of ADSS and the opening of the new school, which we're also very excited about. But we appealed to our ministry and, you know, sort of said, look, we need some facilities for this program, or unfortunately we're probably going to be faced with closing the program down. And they responded favorably, and we're now building a new facility on campus. So the culinary arts will be moving back to the Roger Creek campus in Port Alberni. And that program really focuses on local production, local foods. We're hoping to give it a much stronger emphasis around First Nation foods and First Nation cooking methods. We believe that the resorts on the West Coast would be very pleased with cooks coming out, with chefs coming out with that kind of skilled training. And there is no other program on the island that has that sort of a focus. Just having a conversation today with a community member about a program he's familiar with called Natural Steps, a sustainability program that can be built into business. And we're looking at whether or not we can build that into our business admin program. I'd love to develop a business course where students are learning about sustainability from a business administration perspective and building that into their business admin program. So we have a number of initiatives sort of on the go that we're exploring. And I'm happy to talk with any of you afterwards about some of those initiatives or some of the things we could be doing. Thank you very much for your time.
Thank you, Tom. And next up would be Wade Nicklin. Wade's not among us? All righty, well, we'll just go ahead then. Sean Flynn had to beg off. He said that just too much business to do and can't put it down. Jason Smard from Coastal Credit Union.
All right, well, thank you for the opportunity to represent Coastal Community Credit Union, who I think plays a big role in the Alberni Valley community. But I think due to the fact that we don't have huge marketing budgets, we don't often get the credit for the things that we do in the community. So one of the reasons I'm here tonight is to sort of tell you what we're doing in the community right now. So Coastal Community Credit Union, as you know, just recently was awarded we were number 20 in Canada for most engaged employees, or our employees were basically filled out a survey, and that survey rated us 20th in Canada with all companies as far as engagement. So we have very engaged employees, and one of the reasons we're engaged is because we care about the communities that we live in. I live here in Port Alberni, and so do my staff, and we're fortunate to work for an organization where we can earn a fair wage and have benefits and those great things. But we don't take that for granted. We take that as hey, you know what, we need to get out in the community and make a difference. So some of the things that we do is we've worked with local agriculture in the Alberni Valley to help promote agriculture, which, you know, for a lot of people, they don't know where to go if they want to get good local produce. A lot of people don't know where you go for that. Well, we've helped put together a directory. We've helped put together a barbecue the last few years. And this barbecue showcases the local agriculture that's available here in the Alberni Valley. And that's been very successful. We were able to raise over $6,000 over the last few years for the Bread of Life doing that event. We are out in the community helping do work with different community groups. We provide free banking services for nonprofit organizations. In a time where, you know, funding is tough and lacking right now, we're providing free banking services to those kind of organizations. So these are just some of the small things that we do. And somebody asked me tonight, they said, what do you guys do with your profits? You know, I know banks make huge profits, and you know, what do credit unions do with their profits? It's pretty simple. We give our profits back directly to the communities that we serve, to our members, and directly to making the communities that we serve healthier and stronger. So that's what the credit union is all about. It's about making a difference locally in the community. Those are just some of the things that we're doing, and I apologize, I'm a little nervous to be in front of all you today, but we're doing a lot in the community right now, and we would love your support. You know, the more business that people do with credit unions, the more they're giving back directly to their communities. And every dollar that people invest or do business with a credit union stays locally in that community, and a lot of people don't know that. Coastal Community Credit Union employs over 650 people, and they all work here on Vancouver Island. We don't have call centers in Toronto, Pakistan, or India, or any places like that. Our people are right here on Vancouver Island, and they're spending money locally in the communities. And so I wanted to end on just asking people to think, does it matter where people spend their money? And I truly believe that it does, and I want you guys to just take that away and think about that. Does it matter where people spend their money and invest their money? And I like to think that it does. So thank you.
Thank you, Jason. Mr. Watson.
Thank you for inviting me tonight, Dan. I'm pleased to be here. I've been accused of being an addict to PowerPoint, and especially complicated graphs and charts. So tonight I vowed to do it without PowerPoint, so I apologize in advance if you were hoping for the graphs and charts. So what Dan asked me to do is just provide an overview, if you like, of what the city has been doing with regard to sustainability over the past few years. And there's quite a number of points on my list here, so I'm going to run through it fairly quickly, and then if there's questions at the end, we'll circle around and answer them on any ones that you particularly are interested in. So I think that the first thing I wanted to remark on was that the City Council did establish a climate action advisory committee back in 2007, and that was chaired by then Councillor Charles Mealy, and I think there may even be some people that were also on that committee in the room tonight. And that committee provided a 7-step action plan that Council did endorse. And we have been keeping that as a kind of touchstone document. We have achieved some of those things, not all of them, and we're still working on the ones that we haven't. One of the things I noticed from that plan was transition towns, which is this group was mentioned, and we did in fact send some of our staff and I think some other people in the community for some transition town training early on in the process. One of the other things that was recommended that was a sustainability forum in the community, which we did back in 2009, invited a speaker named Bruce Sampson, who was a very good speaker, kind of the Al Gore variety, I suppose, and I think he was probably speaking a bit to the choir, but he did speak very eloquently and persuasively about climate change, and there were some questions at the end from people that were really still doubters about climate change, whether it really was an actual event or not, and I think that was valuable in the community for people that still had some questions in their mind about that. We've also taken an opportunity to do some peer exchange with our staff and other municipalities in British Columbia about sustainability, which was another recommendation of the committee. Shortly after that committee concluded its work, we signed an MOU with an organization called the International Center for Sustainable Communities, which we did some research on and thought was an excellent organization, and it's multinational. We've signed a protocol agreement with them, which has a number of commitments of things that we're going to work towards, and that's another document that we are keeping up on the bulletin board and working our way through those commitments. One of the things that organization facilitated for us is undertaking a community sustainability assessment report, which a young lady named Amber Zernhelt came to Port Alberni, and some of you may have had a chance to speak with her. She did a community resource assessment of our ability to move towards sustainability. Quite an interesting document, and if anyone's interested, I can certainly provide that for you. Amber has moved on and is now the sustainability coordinator in Campbell River, which I envy Campbell River having one of those. But anyway, moving on. We, like a number of municipalities in British Columbia, signed the BC Climate Action Change Charter, which was a partnership with the province of British Columbia and contains a number of points that we have committed to move towards. The one that I think is the most challenging and got the most press is that we will strive to be carbon neutral by 2012. Now, talking to other municipalities, and there's I think over 170 of them that have made these commitments, nobody's on track for that. But it's a commitment. Now, there's a way you can be carbon neutral, and it just involves buying carbon credits. But that's not the intention. We want to be carbon neutral on our own. So, another commitment that we have made. In 2010, internally, we undertook an assessment to find out what our greenhouse gas inventory is. And I think that was a natural first step. You need to know, before you can measure how many greenhouse gases you've reduced, how many did we have to begin with. So we completed that in-house with an estimate for our corporation and also an estimate for the community at large. So we have those figures in hand, and I can share those with you if you like. So all of that I just talked about is things that we've talked about, we've committed to, we've studied, but what have we actually done, I guess someone might want to know. So I have a list of things that are more nuts and bolts that we've actually done, and I'll go through that quickly. When we did our greenhouse gas inventory, it was clear that most of our greenhouse gas emissions are through our buildings. I'd say 60-some-odd%, and then about maybe 30-some-odd% fleet, and then some other things. But buildings are our main user of energy and so a creator of greenhouse gas emissions. So we've done quite a few upgrades to buildings. The multiplex, we have upgraded the lighting in the multiplex with better efficiency fixtures. It provides a higher level of lighting, which is good for Bulldogs games and U17 type tournaments, and also is an energy saving upgrade. So that was a benefit both on cost savings, greenhouse gas savings, and a better product. We have changed all of our traffic signals in the community to LEDs, and thanks to our friends from BC Hydro for assisting with that. That was one of their product upgrade initiatives that we took advantage of. And we're keeping a close eye on street light upgrades for some similar product upgrades, because that's the single biggest electric use that we have is the street lights in our community. Having said that, we did some streetlight upgrades in the uptown when we did the streetscape improvements that you noticed. We got rid of those extremely ugly 1960s, 70 vintage streetlights uptown and put in some more attractive. Well, not only are they more attractive, they're much more energy efficient. So some savings there, also greenhouse gas reductions. Probably the biggest savings undertaking we've done is at the Aquatic Center. We completely upgraded the heating, venting, cooling at the Aquatic Center. And it was original equipment to the 1967 construction. And the solution to humidity in the pool was to eject all that hot air out into the air. So now we have heat exchangers, and that is a project that was a very expensive project, but it does save quite a bit of energy, will pay for itself in a relatively short term, and again, reduces greenhouse gas emissions. Similarly, the fire hall, we have undertaken a HVAC upgrade at the fire hall, which reduces the energy consumption of that building. Now, this one's a bit controversial. We have reduced the solid waste tonnages that we take to the landfill. Now, that's in partnership with our friends at the Regional District, who have brought into our community Blue Box recycling program, which facilitated the city saying to people, we're not going to take as much garbage from your house as we used to take. And so we have reduced by about 27% since 2008 the amount of garbage that we haul to the landfill, which reduces our greenhouse gas emissions. This isn't the standard crowd. Couple of other projects that I wanted to talk about. One is a small partnership. We took a small partnership role in the Oopnit Run of the River Power project, which was a Hoopachesit project that took place on the China Creek, in the China Creek watershed, and that's how we got interested, because that's where our water comes from. So we were very interested in that project, and at the end of the day said, yes, this is a good project, and we did some in-kind, primarily things to support that project, and ended up with a 5% share of that project. And it's a small, relatively small run of the river power project, but it generates enough power, if it was directly connected to the city, to power about a third of the residential homes in town. So it's significant enough power in that regard. The other project that we've been working on that can reduce greenhouse gases, and I hope that we'll be able to take credit for that, is our community forest. So we will be just started to start harvesting operations in our community forest this year, and of course that means we'll be planting small trees which sequester more carbon than big trees, and we're still talking with the province about whether they're going to let us take credit for that or not, since the land belongs to them, but we have a license to harvest. Regardless of whether we can take credit for it or not, we know that it will be happening as we move forward in that project. So that's, I think, the highlights of the things that we have done. Did I miss any? No. Well, we're still planning to do some additional building upgrades. As I said, that's our biggest greenhouse gas emission area. City Hall and Echo Center are the next two buildings lined up for greenhouse gas or for HVAC upgrades. Now, we're also working on a very interesting, and I think will be a very profitable and greenhouse gas emission reducing project if it comes to fruition. It's called a district energy system, which we're working on the planning stages of with a consultant by the name of Stephen Salter, who's an expert in that kind of technology. And basically what it would be is a biomass burning facility located somewhere in the vicinity of the catalyst mill, using waste product from our industrial waterfront that would create hot water, and that would be circulated to high energy using facilities in our community like the hospital and schools and our pool and things like that, and that energy that's created by burning that wood waste replaces other energy sources that are currently used, like natural gas primarily, in most of those facilities. So that's something that's in the planning stages. We're pursuing a partnership with Catalyst, hopefully, although there is a plan B where we can do it on our own as well. So we'll see how that planning process works out. We are still working with the International Center for Sustainable Cities on a number of initiatives. One of which is they've asked us if we'd like to be a pilot municipality along with Calgary to have some training with regard to developing capacity for leadership in our organization. So we're looking forward to that training happening relatively soon. And we're talking with them about a framework for moving forward in our sustainability process, and we're looking at something that Tom Weger mentioned, the natural step process, as the front runner, I would say, in that framework selection. So that's it in a nutshell, and I'd be pleased to answer any questions about anything that caught your interest. All right. Thanks, Dan. No questions? Okay. Stephen. We're not allowed to have questions?
No, we're going to have the questions individually later on.
Oh, okay.
Yes. We'll give our speakers a chance to speak first. Ms. Connolly from the Regional District.
There we go. Hi, I'm Carla Connolly. I'm a planner with the Alberni Clayoquot Regional District. And the planning department, we're trying to do our part to promote sustainability by reviewing our existing official community plans. These are documents, and I'm not sure how familiar you are with the official community plans, but they are for all the outlying areas in the Alberni Valley specifically we're dealing with right now. So those include the areas of Beaufort, Beaver Creek, Cherry Creek, and Sprout Lake. And these are documents that contain policies and proposals that relate to land use. Specifically, they contain policies related to residential, commercial, industrial, parks and recreation uses within the areas. And we are updating these existing documents that were created either in the late 90s or early 2000s. So those 4 areas were done, and we're looking at them all as one to try to create a cohesive plan for the Alberni Valley so that they all, while they may not be identical, will be somewhat similar so that there is that cohesiveness throughout the valley. And we are doing that. You may have seen our placards on the road while you're driving by out to the areas when we hold our open houses. Excuse me. We're dealing with the communities through public open houses that are open to everybody, and as well as working with the advisory planning commissions specifically in those areas to update the documents to make sure that they meet the needs of today's residents. So some of them were actually created in the late 90s, where the needs and wants of the community members at that time may not be applicable to the members that are currently residing there right now. So we're just trying to do our part, and an example of where we're introducing some sustainability principles is through or conservation subdivision. And I'm not sure if you're familiar with that term, but we're basically encouraging developers to, when they develop their parcels of land, if they have, let's say, 5 acres, to concentrate the development in a certain part of the lot instead of just parceling it up into 1-acre parcels. Maybe cluster it into the one side or one half of that, while preserving some of the natural area or green space. And as a bonus, to encourage developers to do that, we are giving them additional density bonuses, which is something new that we haven't done in the area. I know they encouraged it on the west coast, but it's not done in the Alberni Valley, so we're trying to incorporate that into the plans of the Alberni Valley, and that's one way that the regional district is trying to encourage sustainability initiatives within the Alberni Valley. So that's just a brief overview of what we're doing in the planning department just by reviewing the official community plan. So if after the speakers are all gone through, if you have any specific questions, come see me, because I can talk for hours about rural plans, so I don't want to put you to sleep. Thanks.
Is Jack McClellan still here? Good. If you could say a few words on behalf of the Pacific Rim Health Co-op.
Not Carol Hansen.
Thank you. Just briefly, after I got here, I found out that the Pacific Rim Health Services Co-op was supposed to talk, but we didn't have anybody coming. So as far as sustainability goes, I believe if we don't have medical practitioners, enough of them for the population, you don't have sustainability, people can't stay. So that is what we're doing in the Pacific Rim Health Services Co-op. We have brought 6 or 7 doctors into town, 4 have stayed. We're hoping to get more. The past year hasn't been as good. And that's about what we're doing. We're down at Elizabeth Street Co-op, the Elizabeth Street Clinic, pardon me. And the city has been very supportive. They provided the building. We worked on it, got it all fixed up nice, and hopefully we can keep doing what we're doing, but it's always a lot of challenges. So thank you very much, and apologize for not being Carol.
Thank you, Jack. Bob Collins?
Well, I own property in the city. I can vote. My name is Bob Collins. I have a few hats on here tonight. The president of the Alberni Valley Farmers Institute. I am a farmer. I'm an agricultural journalist, and I'm a member of the Transition Towns food community. I'm going to speak tonight just as Bob the farmer, so what I'm going to say isn't the official line from anyone else. And when it comes to sustainability in farming, we can think of how farming is done, but I think that's a moot point at this juncture. Sustainability that I'm going to talk about is whether or not there's even going to be any agriculture here. I have a few numbers. This isn't something that's exclusive to the Alberni Valley. A few numbers I did in a column a while ago talking about demographics in Canada. And we just had a census year. The numbers aren't out yet, but they'll be along in the spring. But if we go back over the past 20 years, number of farms in Canada have dropped from 280,000 to 229,000. This is as of 2006. They're depleting at more than 1% a year. Between 2001 and 2006, the number of farmers in Canada under the age of 35 dropped from 40,000 to 30,000. The number from 35 to 54 dropped 11.5% in the same time frame. The number over the age of 55 went up 10.2%. If we just take those same rates and apply them to what's coming down the pipe, we're going to find that in this next census, the under 35 crowd is going to be down to 23,000. The 35 to 54s will be 146,000, and the over 55s will be the largest single group, 147,000. My bet is, personally, that you can't apply those same numbers because in that middle group, the biggest bunch of them are at the far end. There's a lot more turning 55 than coming in from the other end. I firmly believe that when the census numbers come, more than half of the farmers in Canada are going to be over 55 years of age. Given the average lifespan of people in Canada right now at 76, 20 years from now, the average farmer is going to be older than 26 and will statistically be already dead. It sounds funny, but that's the reality of the thing. We live in a country where the average person eats 3,180 calories of food a day. So you would think there's a big opportunity for someone to grow food to provide 3,180 calories a day. The problem is trying to provide a business opportunity. When we look at young people, and we've talked about this in transition towns, and I know there are people thinking, what can we do to encourage young people there? How can we come up with some kind of a program for them to access land to go farming? That's treating the symptom. It's not the problem. The problem is that why there's no one doing it is there is no realistic business opportunity for them. All of these people that are farming, all of these 147,000 farmers that are over the age of 55 have children or grandchildren. I would bet 90% of them would gladly just give them the farm. I have 3 kids, so it's there. Any one of them wants to come home and farm. They've decided they'd like to hang on to the property, But they're going to hang on to the property because it's not all in the agricultural land reserve. There is 10 acres out of that with some zoning that would allow them to actually do a subdivision. They said, we'd like to try and hang on to the property, but none of us are under any illusions about farming. Unfortunately, the oldest one of them is going to pass through the 35-year age barrier and wouldn't even help that demographic if he comes. So it's not a question of finding young farmers, it's a question of providing an opportunity, a business opportunity, and we need buy-in from the public. And if there's anything anybody here wants to get involved in, they had better talk to people and come up with some kind of a plan for how people in this community are going to buy food. Province-wide, more than 95% of the people in this province are in favor of the agricultural land reserve. Yet I would bet in this valley, you could probably find the same numbers, less than 5% of the people are actually committed to buying the stuff that's grown on that agricultural land reserve. And I feel a little bit disingenuous saying that here because we're preaching to the converted and there are people sitting here that I know do much better than that. Beef is a big part of our business. We have a market penetration in the Alberni Valley on a per capita basis of 1/4 pound a year. That's not a lot. Hence, it doesn't translate into a very big business opportunity. There's no point in growing it. There's certainly nothing that interests my kids. Imagine if we could increase that 100-fold to where we had a per capita market penetration of 25 pounds a year. We would need somewhere between 800 and 1,000 head of cattle to fill that market that would justify an abattoir here, not just somebody doing a couple a week at the back and fighting. It would be a full-blown thing. Once that abattoir was in place, you would find a sheep industry would probably come back in there. You would find pigs would come back in. The community would have a sustainable, locally grown, in-home meat system. The way it is now, those animals get hauled to Courtenay and back, and everybody's got an extra $200 invested in hauling the stuff in and out, which means even less profitability, even less reason for my kids or anyone else's kids to do it. My wife and I sat down today and said, try to think of how many people you know in the Alberni Valley under the age of 35 that have full-time jobs as farmers. And we can think of 2. There are lots of other people that are doing a bit on the side, working. It becomes, and I'm reluctant to call it hobby farming, it sounds somewhat demeaning, but ultimately if you're making your living doing something else, what you do farming is a lifestyle choice or a hobby choice or just something you want to do. And it's subject to any number of other things. If a different job opportunity comes along, you're gone. It's not a sustainable thing. It's not something the community can rely on. If you decided you're going to grow turnips this year, but next year you had a chance to go and visit some relatives back east, so you just don't bother growing them that year. So the solution to this is a business opportunity, and the only way you're going to get that is to have some community buy-in. I've been preaching about this stuff now for 35 years, and to be dead honest with you, I'm tired of it. I'm not going to go out and try and convince people to come and buy food anymore. If they don't want it, I won't bother growing it. I'm at the age where I don't care about it. Well, I shouldn't say I don't care about it. I'm just not prepared to go and fight about it anymore or complain about it. Farming for us has become largely kind of a Max Yasgur exercise. I mean, some people here must be my age. You know who Max Yasgur is? Max was one of the biggest dairy farmers in his county in New York. Milked 650 Guernsey cows, supplied God knows how much milk and dairy products for years. He's known for one thing, letting 500,000 hippies have a rock festival at his farm one weekend. Now, at our place, we get a lot more interest from people who want to ride on a wagon down to pick a pumpkin they're going to carve holes in and throw in the garbage than anything else. I have 200 people on a weekly mailing list of what's going on there. On a typical week, we might see 5 or 6 people. They're all interested. They all ask to be on the list. They all write back in newsletters or write back and say, I really like the news. I really like the stuff you told me about this or that. But it doesn't translate into a business opportunity. Not for us. It doesn't matter for us. We have a campground on this section of the farm that's not in the ALR. Our accountant tells us every year, if you want to improve your financial situation, quit growing food. Ditch it. That's not something we choose to do, but I suggest that's a problem for everybody here if they want a sustainable food system. So that's not very happy news, but that's the reality.
So is Rob Gentleman here? Great.
Good evening. My name is Rob Gentleman. I've got a loud voice. I probably don't need this, but anyways. My name is Rob Gentleman, and I'm a woodworker. I run a small woodworking business called Green Earth Woodworks. My specialty is essentially building furniture out of old salvaged wood. I've moved here recently from Victoria, recently being a year and a half ago. And coming into Port Alberni, there's a few things I've noticed as a woodworker, as a salvaged woodworker. Port Alberni, y'all got a lot of wood here. There's there's wood everywhere. It's unbelievable how much wood, it's just everywhere. It's unbelievable. And the other thing I've noticed too, unfortunately, is a lot of the wood, from my perspective anyway, as a woodworker, is underutilized, or there's a lot more use for it per value. There's a lot more value that can be added to it essentially before its demise as hog fuel or other. Let me just check my notes here, as I can't remember everything I was going to tell you. My goal for this evening isn't to plug my business. Mind you, I do have a display at the back. If you want to grab a card, feel free. My goal, of course, right? My goal is rather to enlighten you as to the value of salvaged wood, and to just show that there is potential, especially in Port Alberni, to be able to use this wood a little bit more than is already being done. When I was in Victoria, when I used to live in Victoria, I used to pay at a salvage yard. I used to go to a salvage yard and pay for wood to use for my furniture. And in Port Alberni, I haven't paid a penny yet. It's basically in people's burn piles, and I'm able to grab gorgeous pieces of old Douglas fir and other sorts of wood to use for furniture. And to me, it's a shame that this wood is out there not being utilized as much as it can be. So. An example, last summer I did a job for a restaurant in Calgary. I built them 35 tables out of wood that was essentially going to be turned into hog fuel here. I was able to get my hands on some of that, and beautiful, beautiful furniture, beautiful wood, and like I said, it was sort of deemed to be turned into hog fuel. And the same this summer too. I did another job for a restaurant in Victoria, once again building tables for them and a bar top. With wood that was otherwise, headed for the landfill. So there is definitely more value there. I did bring a few samples just to show you what I mean by salvaged wood. And salvaged is essentially, I've salvaged old wood. It isn't salvaged until someone's rescued it from the burn pile. In most cases, it's just old wood. This is a piece of, I was just helping a friend the other day mill some boards for his basement. This is a piece that was from the APD mill that was taken down last summer. This is the same stuff I use to make my tables. It just looks like dirty old wood on this side. It's obviously weathered, old. Most people would look at it and think, it's not worth anything. An eighth of an inch in, it's gorgeous Douglas fir, exactly the same is what's under your feet right now. It's beautiful old gross Douglas fir, and like I said, this was going to be into the hog fuel pile. So I'm not saying there's anything against burning it. I know that eventually wood will get to the point where there's no value left in it essentially, and it's a great use for it. I still think a piece of wood like this, we can still do something with it. This is another example I brought to you. A friend of mine found this on a construction site in Victoria. The other side, which I'll show you in a second, had it was basically being used as a sign. It said wet paint on it. It was leaning against the wall. And I don't know if you can see it in the light, it's a beautiful piece of black walnut. It's, yeah, it's probably about a $50 or $60 piece of wood being used as a sign. And it wasn't in this condition. It was like this on both sides. And we ran it through my planer at the shop, and it's like, wow, it's an expensive sign. So anyway, it does, you know, a lot of people don't look at wood the same way I do. And like I said, my goal is to show that there is some value in a piece of wood like that just looks like a dirty old piece of wood that you might want to, you know, put in your fire. So hopefully I've given you all an idea that there is a bit more value here. As far as an industry goes, I think there's potential for an industry using salvaged wood. I know bigger cities, there's salvage companies that are taking down older buildings, turning the old wood into products, milling it, selling it, whatever, turning it into flooring. There's definitely potential for that here. We've got labor, we've got space to do it. We've definitely got the wood. There's old buildings all around us that could be essentially salvaged and reutilized. So just something to think about. And if you have any questions, I'm around in the back corner there. If anyone wants to ask about salvaged wood.
Thanks, Rob. And is Sandra here? Come join us.
This is so interesting to speak right after my husband. This is awesome. Thank you. Yes, that's right. Thank you for organizing that. No, Dan, thank you so much for inviting us today. Dan and I met last year when I invited him to do a talk for a group I was holding at the Integrated Health Network in my job here in Port Alberni. Dan helped with the topic on backyard gardening because I'm trying to get more and more people to use their land to garden and grow food because we need that, as we all heard in many different presentations here. So, Dan, I appreciate that you've invited us to speak today because my husband and I have moved recently from Victoria, and basically the outdoor elements of Port Alberni and the potential, the recreation potential here brought us here. We saw the wind on the inlet. Actually, we answered a call. We heard someone say, why is there no sailing and windsurfing and kiteboarding on the inlet, on Port Alberni Inlet? And we came and checked it out, and we noticed there is wind. Why isn't there? And then we realized there's not much access. So we did create the business, Wild West Water Sports, and started to offer access for recreational use on the inlet over the last 2 summers, and had very successful 2 summers. This past summer, we started introducing a sailing school to the youth of Port Alberni. So we partnered with the Mobile Optimist Sailing School, which is a BC sailing operation, and it's a nonprofit organization. And we got 19 local kids, aged 5 to 15, on the inlet sailing for 5 days. So it was wonderful. Both our kids learned how to sail this summer, so we're pretty excited about that. So we're hoping and planning to bring it back next year. Actually, before I came to this meeting today, I went to the district PAC meeting at Wood Elementary tonight to introduce the idea of having a sailing school come in the spring for the various schools. So the 2 coaches that came from Vancouver with the sailing school came and couldn't believe Port Alberni and what an amazing place this was, and all the community support with the sailing school. The Sea Cadets, the Navy League, actually half of the 19 kids came from the Navy League, and we had great support with them. So it was a really successful sailing week, and hopefully it wasn't super windy that week. We had a funny summer this past summer with the wind, and we didn't want it to be super windy for the kids because they are in small little Optimus sailing boats that are 8 feet long, and we had a very sheltered area for them to sail, but because it was calm most of the days, they were able to go out in the bigger inlet, and we were in a rescue boat and we were with them, and it was so amazing to see at the end of the week these kids were able to put their mast up, put the sail up, put the rudder in, and put the boat on the dolly, get it into the water, and partner up with a teammate and sail for the day. And it was amazing to see these kids grow over the week and use problem-solving skills and team-building skills, and it was a really exciting week for us and for them. So we hope to see that in the future, more of the sailing school. So that's partly what we're doing here. Another thing is with my job, I'm kind of speaking a little bit with Jack. He was talking about the co-op building, and that's where the Integrated Health Network is, and it's a team of a dietitian, myself, and a nurse and a social worker, and we partner with local physicians trying to help people take control of their health that have chronic diseases. So it's helping people set goals and action plans for their health with diet and exercise. So that's partly kind of what we are doing in the Valley, and we love it here. So anyways.
Thank you, Sandra. And our last speaker for the night, Guy Langlois.
Hi, I'm Guy Langlois. I'm new to Port Alberni, and I just have to say it's such a wonderful town, and really happy to be here. I've been getting involved with various groups, and I'm really happy to be involved with the Transition Society or Transition Towns group. So my presentation tonight will be on green building and working towards net zero energy. So what I like to do is present some solutions to you so that you can consider it if you're considering to build a new house, or also have a proposal for the community. What I want to do is propose some solutions to retrofit all existing houses in town. So I'm going to show you a few options if we can get it going. And I moved to Port Alberni to work at North Allen College, teaching carpentry at North Allen College. I have a bunch of brochures over there, and if you'd like to talk to me about some of our programs. I used to teach at Green Building 2. So I used to teach at VIU in the Green Building and Renewable Energy program, and that was there we go. It looks a little squished. Okay, great, thank you. So what's the impact of building on the environment? And so buildings actually do have a huge impact. So the guy from the city there was saying is that he was finding that the biggest demand in energy was for their existing buildings. So 30% of raw materials go into buildings, 27% of energy use, 30% of landfill. Now, when there's a boom, that actually goes up in numbers, and so that's including all new and renovations, and 13% of greenhouse gas emissions in BC. So it's a pretty huge impact. So what is green building? Well, it's part of a solution. It's not just, there's lots of different ideas to try to address the problems of greenhouse gas and global warming, but certainly farming is one, and I'm involved with that issue also. So to create a green building, what we do is we select durable materials, and the first thing I put up there is wood, because it's my favorite material to work with, being a carpenter, but there's other solutions out there, and cedar is one of the best ones. We also have to consider the embodied energy in the building. Like this comes right from where the materials come from the transportation of those materials to the site and how those materials are used on site. So there's like a life cycle of a material. I like the presentation from that young man there was talking about reusing existing wood that would be thrown away. Green building, one big principle is to reduce thermal bridging. I teach building science, so that's, it may sound, what is thermal bridging? Basically, it's the transfer of heat through a wall from studs. This is a thermal image map that you would take with a thermal camera, and it's showing where the heat loss is in a house. So basically where all the studs are is where you lose some of your heat. Of course, most of the heat is loss of windows, but, you know, so this gives you an idea of where the heat loss is in the house. And of course, we want to increase insulation, make it airtight. But when we make it airtight, we have to ventilate and try to create a better indoor air environment. So air quality is really important. And we have to consider some way of heating the building. My presentation is mostly about the building envelopes. And so passive heating would be considering the energy of the sun. So we would position a house on the lot so that the sun would come through the windows and heat some mass inside of a house, and then we'd ventilate just passively by providing windows that would ventilate the house. Of course, we need to conserve on materials by the design of our houses and reduce construction waste. The last one I've added on there is my own little thing that I've added on to green building principles, is designing for the region that you're building in. In Vancouver Island, you can see it. Ooh, that map's really squished. But Vancouver Island actually shares two hydrothermal regions in North America. So we're actually a part of a marine climate and a cold climate similar to what's in central United States. But our building codes throughout Canada and the rest of Canada is very cold building climate. So where our building codes are we share the same uniform building codes across Canada, so we end up with some issues with that. So we try to create regional requirements for our building codes. And one of that is like vapor barriers and ventilation. The rain screen was one of those issues. So the big point here is to design a house and build a house that's appropriate for your region. So I don't want to make too long a presentation here. So we've got the advantages of green building would be to mitigate climate change, to lower operating and life cycle costs, to reduce energy demand, reduce construction waste, reduce emissions of hazardous substances, reduce reliance on natural resources, and water conservation. This is all possible. This is being done, and there are a lot of ways of doing it. A good example, it was CMHC sponsored a program called the Equilibrium Program at the bottom of the screen there. And this example here is in Edmonton, Alberta. I like this example because this contractor is one of the best contractors, in my opinion, in Canada for building net zero buildings. What is a net zero building? Basically a building that would, has net zero energy consumption, and how it does that is by actually creating energy by photovoltaic systems, and also with consideration of all the materials, you consider the carbon emissions annually, and that should be net zero too. And how we do that in a cold climate is we increase the insulation, we seal it, make it airtight, and we insulate, which means thermal design for solar thermal, okay, and provide thermal mass. So in this example here, why I like this one is that it shows you the actual dollars and cents. I get this kind of question all the time. It says, how much does it cost? You know, is it going to cost? Is going to increase the cost of my construction quite a lot? Well, I usually have a set answer. It says, well, maybe about $5,000 or $6,000. Most people are pretty shocked in a new construction that can come that cheap. So basically, it's just a different philosophy in teaching. In construction, so basically, we're looking at increasing the wall thickness and adding a little bit more insulation. So in this example here, of the net zero home, it actually costs $109,000 to achieve net zero energy. So that was to provide the photovoltaics and the hot water heating system, but only $18,000 of that $109,000 was actually created 85% of that energy conservation. So let's break it down and look at that and what happened. So the 18,000, out of the 18,000, we're looking at better insulation, windows, heating systems that are more efficient, appliances, and passive solar design for a total of $18,000. So we got the impact of 85%. Then we look at solar heating systems, hot water heating systems. They would have evacuated tubes type systems on your roof. And those systems for this project was $37,000, and it achieved 10% of that goal. Then we look at photovoltaic systems to actually bring that to 100% net zero energy, and the cost of that system was $54,000, and only achieved 5% of the goal. So there's your numbers. So what you need to look at is what would you do if you were going to invest in new construction and get your best buck. The Germans are actually really good at this. They have developed a system called Passive House. And what we've got here is an example of a double wall system. The contrast is not too good, but basically it's two independent walls, 2x4 walls. I've built hundreds of houses like this in Northwest Territories, and you get about an R44. Most people, the first reaction says, wow, that's overkill, you know. But, you know, in Germany, this is what they're building their houses. It's a really good design. It came out from Canada. A Saskatchewan farmer came up with the idea. It's part of the R2000 program. I'm just going to go through a few things really quickly here. Insulated concrete forms are a system that's gaining popularity. Habitat for Humanity had adopted this building method a few years ago, so all their buildings are built with this specification. A very highly efficient system, though it uses a lot of styrofoam, which is dependent on oil. I like this system. This is one of my favorite ones. Durasol. It's made in Canada, in Ontario. It's basically a fiber cement product. You take waste products from mills, really good use of pine beetle wood, mix it with cement, and you make a block. And our value of this block would be about R30. What's beautiful about this is you pour concrete in it, and then you have thermal mass in your walls. A very, very energy efficient system. Can be cut with a saw, so it's very versatile. Structural insulated panels is another system that's hasn't really quite caught on, but there's a few good contractors on the island, and I have a few links there. But what I'll do is give you a link at the website at the end of the presentation to write down, and you can get all this information. One thing I don't like about this is basically the indoor air quality of these buildings. It's a super airtight building, and you're basically living in a styrofoam cup. So there's lots of off-gassing from the plastics and the plywoods and the formaldehydes, and I just don't think that the air quality in these buildings is good. This is something I came across in my research. The Now House is an initiative in Ontario. So this was actually a part of the CMHC Equilibrium project. So it's a retrofit. This was basically a wartime house. Previously to CMHC was called the Wartime Houses Limited, and they built and sponsored hundreds or millions of or close to a million houses like this throughout Canada. So we have houses like this in our town. They were built pretty quickly to accommodate workers in the wartime. So they're typically 2x4 walls with little or no insulation. And so this is a huge challenge for Canada. All these houses exist, and they're consuming a lot of energy. And so this example here is that they retrofitted this house to net zero. And so they actually reduced their emissions by 5.4 tons. They achieved net zero. So it's all the electricity is all looking pretty good, except affordability. So again, when you add the solar water heating systems and photovoltaic systems, that's what's adding to the cost. If you wanted just to basically retrofit the building, you could do this. This is the standoff wall system. I built, well, let's say retrofitted when I was working for public housing, close to 680 units for public housing using this system. So I know the results. You can actually achieve quite a lot of energy reduction with this system. So it's basically building a truss outside of a wall system, so there's no disruption of the inside space at all, and all the building is done outside. When you do that, you can put new siding, you can put your rain screen, and address all the problems with moisture in our region here. So this is one of the best solutions. So what I'm proposing here is a community type initiative so that we get together and provide some retrofits for existing buildings here. So we would have to develop a local team to discuss this and set goals for our community and try to reduce our energy consumption in these existing buildings by at least 25%. And we can achieve that. I know that I've actually seen 30% energy reduction in these buildings when we reduce them, when we retrofit them, sorry. So we'll explore funding opportunities and bring designers, builders, and I have to tell you that we actually have those people available. I was involved with a group of contractors in Nanaimo, and we actually built a net zero home there. So there's a good example for you to look at if you want, or if you're interested. But I would like to do that here in Port Alberni, and we'll retrofit one existing building to net zero, or perhaps just retrofit it to get 25%. Right. So there's the website if you wanted some more information on this presentation and all the links that are there. I could have talked for a couple more hours, but I hope you enjoy the presentation. So I'll be right over there, and I've got lots of information for you there about our college programs. Thank you very much.
And that concludes this part of the program. I would just like to say in closing that what we really want this to be is the first round of conversation. We want this conversation to go out into a broader community. We want these businesses to talk to other businesses that they know, that we can do business and promote sustainability at the same time. And in doing so, that's how we'll build a better, more resilient community. Thank you very much for coming, and do circulate around and ask questions of the speakers and talk to each other. Thank you.